bin ich vertracht und ich bin sicher, ich verlier. Nicht kein Schum von dem, was du hast lieb gehabt in mir. Was du mit mir nicht gewesen, wollt's gewinn verkackt. Ach, Cholm hat sich mir gecholmt, hat etwas sich zerknackt. Mit es halt in ein sich rieren mit es halt in ein sich rieren mit mein Kopf strahlt sich mit
Welcome back to another episode of Radiant Others. My name is Dan Blacksburg. I'm a trombonist, composer, educator, improviser, what have you. And as usual, I'm recording from my West Philly basement. This podcast, Radiant Others, where I talk to great, amazing artists and friends and colleagues from our beloved Yiddish and klezmer scenes. Today is part 2, a couple days late than we planned, but here, part 2 of my conversation with the one and only Daniel Kahn, actor, singer, songwriter, leader of the Painted Bird, a band that really made a lot of waves in the Jewish world. And Daniel Kahn, he's our guy, he's my guy. I was part of the Painted Bird for years. I'm on a lot of those recordings that I just mentioned that made the waves. And we talked before in part 1 kind of about what it was like before the Painted Bird, how he learned to be a musician, how it related to his sense of Judaism, how discovering klezmer music, Yiddish culture, the Yiddish language, Yiddish songs totally changed the course of his life, and how interacting with this klezmer community also is a big part of directing the course of his life towards what it's been for the last, I'd say, 20 years. And we've been in the trenches together for most of that time, or maybe all of that time. And we get to talk a lot about just having been in this thing, what it was like making the Painted Bird records. We talk a lot about being under the influence of our influences, as Dan says. That is a phrase that I love because it really shows, especially when we were young, how we were just doing our damnedest to synthesize and create from all of the stuff that we had, we're trying to eat and digest, all the artistic experiences and ideas and materials. And the fact that we kind of did, especially Dan really has done this over and over again, most notably with his newest record that's coming out in a couple weeks on November 14th, Umru, Unrest, which is just another collection of Yiddish songs, original Yiddish songs, Yiddish translations of English songs, including by Bonnie Prince Billy and Tom Waits, and some original settings of poetry. And, you're kind of just doing the same thing. You're creating this music from your heart, from your mind, with the purpose of looking back, connecting inside ourselves, looking forward. And ourselves is not just like Dan himself. What's amazing about this is that we use this process, we use this world and the Yiddish music, the process of creating Yiddish music, new Yiddish music, to connect not just to ourselves, but our whole community and beyond. And over the course of the conversation, we get to talk a lot about all the different ways that work has had impacts beyond what either of us doing it could have even dreamed of, and what it's like to have had those impacts, inspiring people, meeting those people later on in life, finding out the reach of Dan's music. I know it was a big shock to me when I started really understanding the full reach of some of those songs that we played a lot at concerts all over Germany and Eastern Europe. It's wild and it's beautiful, and it reminds me of why I do this podcast. So I know you'll really enjoy this conversation because it comes from both of our hearts and from a deep love of each other and this world and our lives in this world with this big, amazing community. And this podcast, I think, has become a part of this community too. At Klez Canada, I was really honored that people came up to me and said, "Hey, you're Dan Blacksburg. I recognized your voice from your podcast." It's really clear to me that this, in the way that most of our Yiddish music has a very deep, even though it's not a very wide engagement, is accomplishing that goal that I had set out to do when I started it, of giving people a way into the deep hang, to the real stuff, to the shit that gets you like fired up to make music, to practice, to learn, to push yourself into something new. That's what I always wanted, because that's what I received from this scene. And in order to do that, to make this podcast, it really does cost a lot of time and money. And me and my producer, Bela Unger, we do everything we can to get these episodes out. It's all we got. And I still spend my own money to create this podcast. I'm so grateful for everybody who donates to us monthly on Patreon, and I'm so grateful to the few people who are trying out our new way of giving us stuff, which is Tip Top Jar, and you can just tip us, tiptopjar.com/radiantothers. But there's so much we don't get to do, so many conversations that we could have, that we could get to you quickly, that we're just not able to. And I'll tell you what, I am so excited about the conversations that are coming up, which I'll talk more about later. But we need your help, always. So please give what you can. I know times are what they are. And in order to face the times that we live in currently, we need some kick-ass music. And there's nothing more kick-ass than the music of Daniel Kahn. So let's get right back into it. Here's my conversation with the one and only Daniel Kahn. I just can't believe how long we've been at this. I was going through my emails the other day, and I was thinking, what were the emails that like we were sending around when we were recording some of these really early records, like Partisans and Parasites? And I realized that I've been sending you emails with videos or articles about parasites for the last 17 years.
Yeah, the Parasite thing. I wrote this song called Parasites after having read a Harper's article in an airport once. It was a short story told from the perspective of a tapeworm, and this kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of looking up various parasitic organisms that manipulate the neurology of their hosts into suicidal behavior. And I wrote this song, and then we started. I had workshopped it with you or something, and you sent me some other stuff, but we recorded the song, and that was on Partisans and Parasites. Years later, I got an email from a parasitologist in Singapore who said that he had discovered the very behavior or the certain aspect of toxoplasmosis that I talk about in the song. He had discovered that. And he said that somebody sent him the song, and he really appreciated it. He said that I got it right, and then he really appreciated me, making his research rhyme, which is,
I think Yiddish culture prizes its Yiddish literature and poetry prizes itself on its scientific accuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, we've been at this for a long time. My one of the ways that developed for me was it happened at the same time. I actually couldn't remember what year this was, but I found it was about 2008 or something, and or maybe it was a little earlier. But it was right when the BBC Planet Earth came out. I don't know if you remember that. It was like one of these
David
first
Attenborough?
things where. with David Attenborough was when they first made these cameras that they could put on a helicopter that could zoom in like a mile or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have these shots of these reclusive snow leopards, and they would it would be a speck, and then they'd zoom in like up to its teeth or whatever. And
I love that
they
show.
had a whole thing I know, no, I watched that so many times on DVD, and I had one of the one on the rainforest episode. They had this whole thing about cordyceps, which is one of the few ones of these, mind altering things, which now everybody knows if you're like a fan of The Last of Us, and
Mushroom
which
Zombies.
I never watched, but
I watched
mushroom zombies.
I like the
can't
Mushroom
watch
Zombie show.
zombie stuff like that. It's it has a lot of feelings in it. I hear anyway. So later on, I was making some really. I had this band making fully improvised music, and for some reason when we would mix this stuff, I would get like a sense of like this music would scare me. And so for this one tape release we did on New Atlantis Records, we called it Cordyceps, and I was looking for artwork, and I found this guy. I think his name is Daniel Winkler. It sounds like I made that up. But anyway, he lives in the Northwest, like the Pacific Northwest, and he does mushroom tours of Bolivia in the rainforest. He does trips to Nepal where they find the real cordyceps, the stuff that people use from these specific beetles or caterpillars that is part of like Eastern medicine, certain parts of medicine. You can get that at like a lot of health food stores now. And he had these amazing mushroom photos of bugs with mushrooms growing out of them, because the cordyceps like takes over your brain, eats you from the inside, turns you into a mushroom, and then spreads its spores to the next victim.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, I love your photos. I want to use it for this music. Here's this crazy music I made. I have $0. I can't pay you anything for your photos. I know you have like a policy of this. He goes, oh, no worries. I'm from Germany. I moved to the U.S. in the late 60s to follow the Dead around, and my favorite stuff is their noisier stuff because that's when I got into it. And I totally get where you're coming from, and I understand DIY. Here's a bunch of my photos. Have fun. And this guy only posted. I mean, I'm not on Facebook much anymore, and I don't think he is either. But like, he used to post like twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. And it would be like, sign up for my next tour. Here's a bunch of photos from my last thing. And it was just like, I mean, the colors on these things are absolutely unreal. Anyway, so, we have our, like we listen to the same podcasts. We have a lot of the shared things. We've been in all the trenches together, and we have a similar bent about mind-altering parasites. Although hopefully, I'll tell you, I'm always worried I'm getting toxoplasmosis from my cat.
You probably are.
I probably have it.
It's probably okay as long as you're not pregnant.
There you go. Well, there you go.
I don't know. It's been a while since I was going on a deep dive into parasites.
Yeah, that was a long time ago for the second Painted Bird record.
Second Painted Bird record, yeah.
And you recorded that in Germany, and then we recorded the horn parts in New York, I remember.
Right. With
Jason
Lafarge over at
Seizures Palace. I was thinking about how that was the first time I went to that studio, which I can't remember. I think that building's still standing, but boy, was that area. This was at 3rd and 3rd in Brooklyn, and that area was a wasteland kind of thing, or at least it was not a place of stores and living places. It was just this warehouse. The place was called the Kahn Factory. And now for years now, there's been like this, one of the biggest Whole Foods I've ever seen. It's like a block up
I remember
from there.
Brooklyn Luthier used to be in there too. I don't know if they're still in there.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good question. No, I mean, that place, Issue Project Room, was in there. I remember going to shows there.
Yeah. I saw Anthony Coleman in there.
Yeah, sure. Anthony was very close to the founder of Issue, Suzanne Fiel. And, yeah, I mean, this is like, I actually really want to talk about your new record before we get too far into the episode. But one of the things that I was just thinking about was listening to The Broken Tongue again and how that sound of that record. I mean, yeah, I joined the band later and was playing those songs and was sort of playing my own version of those recordings, right? So, the trombone, like, doing that tailgatey thing into the time on Beethoven.
Yeah.
But, like, the air sounds. And I was like, oh, I thought those were my moves that I came up with. No, they're like, I like just learned. But it also reminded me of how sort of important and how close. And it wasn't like, it wasn't like a downtown John Zorn sort of like free jazz plus Jewish music or free jazz plus klezmer thing, but that maybe because of the Tom Waits thing, maybe because of which Tom Waits has a lot of connections to, like people from the Zorn world, like Mark Rebo and Kenny Wollesen,
Sure.
who I also was doing, like, playing with, and Michael Winograd was playing with Kenny at the time. Like, how much that sound world was like all locked in. Like, you're like, oh, we got to put some paper clips on the piano strings,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like whatever. It was just like, it was kind of a time and place thing.
It was very much being under the influence of my influences, looking at, so I've got a stack of my CDs here because I'm sitting here in Michigan. I'm visiting Michigan with my son at my mom's house, and I keep a stash of these strange things we call compact discs here. And so I've got the Broken Tongue here, and like it's an incredibly self-made thing. We put it out. Now it's on Orienta. It says here Orienta 2009, but actually we released it in 2006 on the Earthwork label, which was the folk music collective that I was part of in Michigan, and on Hamsa Records, which was Nicky Jacobs' record label at the time.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then we re-released it later when I joined Orienta Music. And it's all so handmade, like the drawings on it were things that I did with like a Bic ballpoint pen on a piece of paper. The way that we made it was very piecemeal, like it was in an apartment in East Berlin that had been squatted in the 90s, and then Detlef Pegelo was still using it as a studio. Detlef and Bert Hildebrandt were sort of mainstays of the Eastern, like the East Berlin klezmer scene. And so Detlef played the trombone on there as well as the cymbalum. And then I just like roped people into guesting on the record. I mean, I think Fabian Schneidler sings on it. Nicky Jacobs sings on it. Brandon Seabrook played some insane guitar and banjo on the record. Eric Rosenthal plays drums.
Really? Wow.
On the record, because they were like in town to play with Paul Brody.
Yeah, sure. Eric Rosenthal of Shirim Klezmer Band and Naftali's Dream, who are people that we definitely have to have on this podcast at some point, and yeah, I mean, this is sort of so typical. I mean, it's also this Boston thing / New England Conservatory era Berkeley thing where you have these people who are, really into weirdo music because there are some really stunning weirdo kind of mentor or / like, like leadership figures like Rand Blake or Joe Maneri who are but then Joe Maneri has this connection to Greek music and Turkish music and klezmer music from his upbringing playing weddings in Brooklyn in the let's say 40s, 50s maybe. And so you have all these people, it's not like a coincidence. It's not like there's some thing in the ether or in the firmament or in like the DNA of these types of music that draw them together. It's just a lot of people with specific stories that happen to overlap, where these two things happen to overlap, and but then it almost like, then you sort of wonder, it's like, how did so many people find this overlap at the same, but it is it's like everybody's story makes sense on its own, and then it adds up to this kind of wild thing from back then, but like I said, who knows if everybody's going to make it to the end of this episode, although they absolutely should. But I really want to just jump all the way into the present for a minute, because you have a new record that's like coming out imminently
in November. And I think November 14th is the official release date.
We're going to have this out before then. And it's, that record is, I mean, you've come so many full circles, but like, let's just give people like you talked about how you made the Broken Tongue so clearly. Like, how have things changed? You know, what do you got coming out? You know?
Well, yeah. So the Broken Tongue we made on 2 different continents. No, actually, the Broken Tongue was pretty in one space, but it was made over a period of like 7 or 8 months, because I pretty much did everything on one of these desktop hard disk mixers.
Yeah.
Like it didn't connect to a computer at all. It was a Roland multi-tracking hard drive, like an independent hard drive. If you wanted to save things, you had to buy an external DV or CD-ROM that was like specific to that system, and you'd back things up on CDs. It was a total like 2001 era technology, and so that record was recorded all in that thing, and it wasn't mastered. I don't think. I just mixed it myself. I think it sounds okay, considering. But then the next record, Partisans and Parasites, like you said, we recorded the horns and also some vocals and some other tracks in Brooklyn, other stuff we did in Berlin. And it was, like, I think we weren't sending tracks through the internet back and forth. I was like flying back and forth with a hard drive.
At least you didn't have a suitcase full of master tapes of like reel to reel.
No, it wasn't that. That would have been a little bit safer,
potentially.
Actually. But that's how we made the second record. But this new album, Umru or Unrest, we recorded it all start to finish in one place on one tape machine in a period of like 4 days. Yeah, I've actually got the CDs already, but it's not officially released yet.
So I mean, we're gonna put a pin in that, but you're still making CDs because you're like, we joke about I have this esoteric thing called CDs, from my childhood, and then you're like, and here's my brand new one that just got pressed recently, But we'll get back to that.
Booklets. I make booklets that are accompanied by some sort of a medium.
Yeah.
And then we're also making vinyl. So
sure, maybe is it specific to this project or is it specific just to this album? But like, I think the way that you balance your songs out has changed a lot. Like there's a lot more other people's songs on this, whether they're translated into Yiddish or not. And whereas like, I think The Painted Bird was such a vehicle, and we'll get back into that in a minute, but I just want to make sure people know, some highlights of this new thing.
This record is kind of the third in a trilogy that I recorded at this studio, and those records are overwhelmingly about Yiddish adaptation and Yiddish translation and setting, starting with Word Beggar in 2021, recorded in 20, I believe, and then that was a solo record, and then a duo record with Jake Schulman-Ment called The Building and Other Songs, which we recorded in 22 and released in 23. And now Umru, which we recorded in 24 and are releasing in 25, which is a trio record with Jake and Christian David. And this one does include a handful of originals, and like all of them include my settings of things and my arrangements and my translations of things. But on this record, there are like 2 completely original songs and one or a couple of settings where I wrote music for things. But yeah, I mean, this has been kind of the project these last 3 records, and like my songwriting has been sort of accumulating in other drawers and in other areas, and I just wrote a whole music theater piece with Stella Morgenstern and Christian David.
Yeah, you might find yourself a little busy in your creativity, oriented towards this young person and your child and things like that. I know how that goes a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, check out this record. It's going to come out. We'll talk more about it.
Yeah, the Umru. It's coming out. We made it. We're working on a couple little videos, and we're going to be touring Germany in January and February, and we're going to be in Vienna with it. And
Yeah.
We'll be busy with it for a while.
Yeah, so like this is a great segue to think about the sort of the Painted Bird and our lives and just like, what did I say in at least one the intro last time? It's like we're people who have really been in the trenches of the music industry or music business, the music life. I actually don't know about the music business, but the music life together on so many, floors and vans without enough seats and places without enough heat and like sometimes fancy hotels and kind of just like so much running the gamut. But I remember when and like I also want to people got to remember that we were these young whippersnappers and people like you and me and Winograd, we were like getting in there and mixing it up with the older cats who were probably some of whom were like our age now or a little bit older and just like we were whippersnappers. Like we kind of talked about the hubris, like kind of like loving our own chutzpah, and we had a lot of it. I didn't personally, I didn't think I had a lot of it. I thought I had very little of it. But like looking back, I was like, I just thought I deserved to be everywhere, which is kind of cool, But Partisans. So when Broken Tongue came out, it felt like and we weren't even playing together that often yet, like you and me, but and you were still like the what the was the personnel that was the longest like running personnel of the Painted Bird hadn't totally come together yet. But then when Partisans and Parasites happened, that's really when it felt like, and it's so funny, it's such a rock band story. I always think about like band, like a real band, a band that's a band for a long time has these sort of like oh, this album is a milestone in this kind of way. And I was just thinking about like how did the main core that became the Painted Bird for like a really long time and through probably the majority of the work come together, and at what point did it start to feel like, I mean, on the one level you could say it started to feel like a business that was sort of like stable, or maybe that it was like, that this was like the band was the band,
Well, so I started out as a singer-songwriter,
Yeah.
which is a fairly modular existence. Like you've got your little bit of gear and you hit the road and you live from your songs and you go around telling stories and kind of being a troubadour or and that was more or less how I survived as a musician up until when this band formed.
Yeah.
And when we formed it, it was me and Michael Tuttle, and at the time Johannes Gresser, and the three of us we had a gig where we would have public rehearsals in Berlin at this little bar, and we would meet there once a week and we would just play, and people could come and drink and hang out. So that was our way of getting around, like doing the thing where you get a rehearsal space and like woodshed with each other. We were never really that band. I'm still not that guy. I like rehearsing on stage. I like keeping it loose and messy, and so that's what we did for a long time. And we recorded the first album, and like I said, it was me and Michael and Johannes, and then we added Bert Hildebrandt, and then there were lots of guests who would play with us, various percussionists and horn players. And really with the second record was when the band kind of started to congeal. Johannes played on it, but not much, and he wasn't really touring with us anymore. And that was when Hampus Malin joined the band, and that was when I started roping you guys in, you and Winograd. And I think Frank even played on the record, but he never toured with us. And so then when we would play gigs in North America, I think generally at that time, it would be like me, Michael, and Hampus, plus whoever could join us for whatever the gig was. And then when we were in Europe, we would have like other folks who would play horns with us. You know, we were playing with Samuel Makern on clarinet. We started touring also. I remember Zoe Christensen was with us for a while, touring, especially in France. And then when it came time to make a third record, we had a deal. We applied for a grant in Berlin, and we had a deal to record for 10 days in this in the basement of a housing block in East Berlin.
It was such a long train ride out there.
It was a long train ride, and it was like, because it was a German grant, it was like this 9 to 5 thing where we were recording from like 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And like, we were used to, you know, working in the middle of the night and like doing things on our own schedule. And that was rough for us. And like, and it was a bigger record. This is what eventually turned into Lost Causes. And we had a producer for the first time, really. Colin Bass, who was living in Berlin at the time. He had produced Rhythm and Jews for the Klezmatics.
And did he also do Jews with Horns?
I think I think that was Ben.
I think that's right. He definitely did Rhythm and Jews. I mean, he was, but his bandmate was Ben is his old bandmate from, and like, you know, that's my entry point. So it's like you're working with these people who are basically like, I mean, that's the cool thing about klezmer always and all the other tiny niche scenes that I like to find my way into is you're like, oh, there's the guy who got me excited about this in the first place.
Right.
And I think, right. And so I remember that Michael Winograd was going over and doing some tours with you.
Yeah.
I think everything was still super DIY in Europe. I mean, and then my first tour with the Painted Bird was going to just be a couple gigs. This was in 2009, I believe. And unfortunately, it was right after your dad had passed. Is that 09 or is that 08?
Well, no, that would have been 2009. And I think you came over just before he passed, actually, because
in Europe.
Because I think you were playing in Berlin and in Krakow.
Yeah, I was in I was going to the Krakow festival every summer that part of my life. I went.
Me too.
It was strange. I mean, you know, I guess the money was flowing and I was young and exciting to somebody, and I make friends with older people fast, so they really liked me. And I mean, I was that year, I believe, was with the Other Europeans still. So the Other Europeans was also this project that had a huge amount of EU funding. That was, you know, even though I often say now that the financial crash of 2008 was this really big demarcation point in my own career and other people's careers where things kind of like a lot of stuff changed and petered out and didn't work the way it used to. There still was some things happening, but in this case, some of that had been paid for from before, right? The funds had been, and then arts funding in Europe was still somewhat intact, right? So you get this grant or whatever. But yeah, so I remember we did this tour up the East Coast, and we ended in Boston, and you were like, hey, we've got this whole Midwest thing, but it's like not for another week. Do you want to just drive to Michigan? And this is the time in my life where I go, I got nothing keeping me at home. I just ditched did I have plans? I don't remember. I don't remember canceling anything. I think I just like got in your car and we drove to Michigan.
And we did the Earthwork Festival.
We did the Earthwork Festival. That was, man, the food there was so, I remember the kitchen and the food from that.
Yeah.
Up in northern Michigan. And we were riding in was it your van or was it somebody else's van? And Soy Korolenko was with us. And he and I had this really long conversation about what makes an offensive joke work or not, or what makes a joke offensive or not. And like, it's funny because I feel like something about this conversation has filtered through other parts of my thinking. But like one of the things we were like, this isn't enough to prove anything, but like the ones that seem a little better are funny and the ones that seem really offensive are terrible. And I was only remembering that because, you know, of that great joke, because, you know, we're re-recording this from the first time we tried recording this half of the thing, and it's like, I was remembering that. It's Daniel Kahn Part 2. 2.
Oh yeah, World War II too.
World War
Yeah.
II. 2. It used to be funnier. Anyway,
It's still funny. I like it.
yeah, and like we played at a jazz club, but so we make Lost Causes. That was a whole big deal, and it was Berlin was covered in snow and ice, and that's my memory, and we made this record sort of like it felt like mining, like we mined that record out of the rock.
Well, that record, I'm holding it now. I'm looking at it. I mean, it's this one. I think comes closest to like what for a long time, I mean, talking about our influences, like when I started thinking about like what it means to make a record, and specifically a Painted Bird record, like probably my main model for what an album could be was Rum Sodomy and the Lash by the Pogues.
Okay.
It was the second Pogues record. It's a classic. It was produced by Elvis Costello, and that mix of original songs that are deeply rooted and could sound and like they could be old, but also like couldn't be anything but new, like taking a traditional form and like kind of slapping you in the face with it. And also playing folk tunes, covers, and instrumentals, like that record, like it's a whole world, and it's also thematically coherent in that it's a critique of British imperialism, by this, Irish band from London.
Right.
And it's, when thinking about how to make Lost Causes and, how to make all of these records, I was like, okay, these are the components. I need new songs that engage with the past but look forward, old songs that look even more forward and that sound even more contemporary, and instrumentals and adaptations and covers, And so that's why you have, on this record, you've got 2 Gebirtig songs. You've got like a really like punk treatment of In Kampf.
Oh,
You've
yeah,
got,
with the punk trombone. This is where I started, figuring out my voice and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like how to play like if the Clash had a trombone.
Yeah.
And then like some folkier stuff. We do the Milner's Tränen. There's like this, like Görlitzer Park was my like German English mashup singer-songwriter thing. Sunday After the War, Inner Emigration. These, like songs where I was taking a poem and setting it to music that Winograd wrote, like Via Zoe.
Yeah.
Like,
and these are some songs that we performed a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, this was a full-time job.
Yeah, I know.
It was like being a band and being the lead singer of this band. That was my life, and
we're
the
band leader,
about,
right? You were, this was your band. You weren't
just. It's Daniel Kahn and the Painted Bird. I mean,
you had to figure out how to get the Matchbox ukulele mic'd. You had to figure out how to get the you had to get the music box going for which one was that? Lily Marlene.
For Lily Marlene. That was my Yiddish translation of the Nazi hit parade. Lily Marlene. And it was Tina Kinderman's idea to translate that, so she sings with me on it and plays saw.
Of course.
Yeah, and this was another record where we had some sessions in New York as well.
Yeah.
Over by what's now the Barclays Center, like Atlantic
what was
Avenue.
that? What the heck was that place called? We made Bessarabi and Hop there, Michael Winograd's first solo band leader record. Wombat Studios.
Wombat, yeah. We went in there and we recorded some. That's how Adrian Cooper appears on the record. That's how Pete Socolo appears on the record.
I remember when we went and I think it was around when we recorded either this or best one of those things. So this is all around the same. I think this was 2010 is my guess when we recorded this. But
Mhm.
all in those years, I remember we were at Wombat Studios and he's like, "Yeah, they eminent domained like all this stuff across the street and like they're just gonna build this giant thing and like I don't know." I
Oh
can't
yeah, that
remember
was the
whether his
Barclays Center.
and it's there's a freaking Barclays Center. I know, I know. No, you like, and then, you know, that reminds me of the part where like I'm like at the coffee shop, the same punk rock coffee shop that I took you whenever you've been to Philly, the Satellite, and I hear
Oh, yeah.
people talk about. I hear people have been like, "Man, I've been in Philly a long time. I've been here like 10 years, and like this, and this is my bitter thing. Like this is my hill I die on, and this is the bitter pill that I'm still like bitter about." And I'm like, I've been here for 40 years. You know,
Yeah.
and yeah, people ask me questions about where things are. I'm like, well, that was, you know, in 1991, that's what's really important, you know, but this is kind of like, you know, this is kind of like that. I'll tell you
Yeah.
anyway.
We're getting old, man. I
I
just
know,
turned,
no, it's good. Yeah, you just had a birthday.
yeah, I'm 3017.
There you go. And you gotta and who knew? Who knew? We'll get to this like more thoroughly, but like, you know, when we kind of reach the present a little bit. But like, yeah, we're not the young upstarts anymore. And at this point, this was the transition between being like real young upstarts, and especially for you, probably for me, although I didn't feel this way, like, no, you're like one of the driving forces, at least in Germany, right, of getting Yiddish music in people's ears, right? Like how much, okay, so like Lost Causes, between Partisans and Parasites and Lost Causes, we have like hits, right? You have like things that you always played on the show. Yussel Bear, Arbeitsloser March, like Sunday After the War, you know, 6 Million Germans, all this, that was on that record, right?
6 Million Germans is on Partisans.
Okay, so either way, it was just
And so is Dumai.
Dumai, and it's like these songs that really became the set, right?
Yeah.
So like, so you know, it's like when you tour enough with a band, it seems to me you get, you know, there's the music. Like if you go to a stadium show and see a famous band, you get whatever, you know, unless they're just on like a reunion tour, you're gonna get like a smattering of the material that they're trying to get you to buy the new stuff, or at least the new stuff that they're working on and excited about, and then you get like the old standbys. And even though this stuff wasn't even that old, these really felt like between those two records, we now had like full sets worth of standbys, you know? And that feels like something. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, every set's different. And I change the set list every night. And even back then, you know, if we had a new record, we'd go out and we'd play that. And we had kind of fixed, you know, medleys or, you know, ways that we like to end the show. But every time you build a set list, you're writing a play, you know, and there's a dramaturgy.
That's right.
To the way that set list is built.
That's right.
You know, my partner Yeva Lapskar said to me once, she said, this was like a thing that she said to me about like me as myself privately. But she said, you know what you do? You weird people out. And like when you first meet somebody, you weird people out, and then you invite them into your weirdness, and then you allow them to relax in it.
Yeah.
And she was being fairly honest with me about what kind of a person I am and how I function, or how dysfunctional I am socially. But I also think you couldn't have had a better formulation for like the way I would build a set list. You know, like I want to come out and like do something that's a little bit out of left field and that's a little confusing and maybe abrasive or alienating in the beginning, and then I'll build on that and bring in more problematic material and difficult questions and, you know, morally ambiguous stories, and then we'll kind of open that up and invite people into it, and then maybe bring it down, make it a little bit more acoustic, make it a little folkier, a little more introspective, a little more private. And then in the end, you can open up that privateness and that quiet feeling, you can open that up into a broader feeling that has more to do with communion and collectivity and joy. And then you can have like really crazy energy at the end. And then at the very end, you can play another personal thing.
Well,
or like a
also if
smaller
you're
thing.
in a place like Germany where they demand like 6 encores, you got to have something soft to like shut them up.
Yeah, and then
Because if you keep playing, I remember when I was really young, I think it was with Frank London, and we would play these things, and Frank's like, "All right, let's hit it with another hard hitting, high octane jam," and that just meant they wanted another encore.
Yeah, I know. They call it the Rausschmeißer. It's
there's a term for this.
The kicker outer.
Yeah,
And that's when you come out and you sing like a creepy lullaby, or like you just do something totally unrelated. You sing a Hank Williams song, or like something that's not Yiddish, something on a ukulele.
You go. Listen, this is our first time performing this, so if it's a little bit like rough around the edges, please forgive us. But I hope you enjoy my rendition of Cold Cold Heart. No,
sure.
Yeah,
I've done that.
totally.
I've gone out and sung. I'll go out and sing "The River" by Springsteen, or like on a ukulele, or one time in Vienna. I can't believe I'm admitting this. I came out and I played like flute.
Why'd you even have a flute?
I had this Caval flute that we bought in Romania. When I was traveling through Romania with the brothers Nazarov, I bought. It was the same one that Eleanor Vey has. This like long, beautiful, and she can play it, but I don't know. I'm terrible. It's awful. Like I torture people with it.
Like you said, what was that jerk? Like that is the kicker outer. Like
that was the kicker out. I came out and I was like,
it's a chance to be ultra indulgent, but for a purpose.
I'm gonna play. I mean, and there is a magical thing about encores and opening songs. Like you have people are open, and their ears are open in different ways at the very beginning, like the very, very beginning of a show, and at the very end.
Yep.
And I did a show once. I did a set with my friend Joshua Davis, a great singer-songwriter from Northern Michigan. And the conceit was, okay, today we're just doing encores.
Huh.
So, and we would play a song and then we say, thank you, good night. And then we would do another, and that was a joke. But it was actually really freeing because the encore can be anything you want it to be. And the same goes for on a record. The very last song on a record is, it's an outlier. And you can make a whole show of outliers, and that's really fun.
No, this is you're like, I feel like you're kind of like pulling some curtains back on me that I wasn't even thinking about. I mean, first I just want to say, and I wish I could remember an example of this, but old records, like maybe from the 70s or 80s, when the hit is the last track and you're like, what are you doing? But different story. But so we're recording this right before Rosh Hashanah, a couple days before Rosh Hashanah, and for the last couple years I've been doing a concert in Rittenhouse Square, downtown Philadelphia, with all of us, a bunch of us Yiddish cats, for synagogue, Beth Zion, Beth Israel, BCBI, which is funny because in a way, and it's not totally true, but just in a little bit of a way, this was the shul that we didn't go to as per the Desert Island joke. And, well,
there's a difference between the shul that you wouldn't go to and the shul that you wouldn't work in.
No, listen, who has... we try. You should be so lucky. No. It was just the place where like when I went to like my school before high school and before, like that was where all the other people I knew went, like all the other Jewish people I knew went in the city. And anyway, so it's very different now, but it's the same beautiful stained glass windows in the building. But yeah, so I was just thinking about this set list that we're putting together, and I got to tell you, I didn't know this, but that I'm on board. Maybe I learned it with us, in the Painted Bird or whatever, but it's like, yeah, we're starting with something like really hard hitting and some rock and klezmer and just jarring people out of their, malaise, and then we're taking them through a couple stories, and then we're going to do some really hard hitting stuff, and like really like, the sad intro, the upsetting material and then we're going to take them right out with, something. And what's really cool is that I'm sort of featuring everybody, you just using the material that everybody in the band already does as a way to sort of do this, because it's a showcase concert anyway. But yeah, it turns out maybe this is where I learned it from, but yeah, we did it.
It tells us you're telling a story, and you're telling an emotional story.
That's right.
And you're bringing a bunch of strangers, hopefully, with you. And yeah, the first thing you have to grapple with are whatever they thought they were going to be experiencing. Right. Because that'll just hinder you if you don't deal with it. So the first thing you have to dispense with is their expectations. And that's where this idea of alienation fit in for me, this Verfremdungsklezmer, which I stole from Brecht's idea of the Verfremdungseffekt, which is that you take something, whether it's a social interaction or an idea, in the case of his theater, but for us, it's people's understanding of what Jewishness is, of what Yiddish is, of what culture is, of what identity is, and what history means to us. And you have to kind of grapple with those presuppositions, those cliches, those expectations, and hopefully you'll engage them further by not giving them what they want. That doesn't always work out. You know, I've had a lot of people that's not, in Germany especially, but all over the place, like, that's not real klezmer, or that's not the real thing, or that's not what we came here for. And I said, well, I'm very sorry. One woman, she told me how much she came up to, it was a show I did with Christian a couple of years ago in a little town in East Germany, and she came up to me, she said, in German, she said, my husband and I have been to klezmer concerts in the past, and I seem to remember that it was somewhat joyous and energetic and lively and happy, fröhlich, But these songs that you sing, these things that you sing about, and this was a show where I was performing with German super titles,
right?
So projected German translations of all the song texts. And she said, so these things that you sing about, they are things that I know about, that I hear about on the news, and they make me very sad. And the world makes me very sad. And to come here and hear you sing about these things, I want you to know that it touches me very deeply, and it moved me emotionally. And I don't like that.
I knew there was a punchline coming. It's so good.
Well,
I
she
don't
didn't
like
mean it
that.
as a punchline. I think she meant it as a serious, accusation. A kind of she was sharing with me, how upset she was that I made her feel all of these
She
things.
came here for an escape, right?
And I said, sorry, I apologize. That's not what you, I mean. Right.
Who deserves an escape? I mean, seriously. And also, let's escape. Let's if escaping requires us to move from one place to another place, what if we just moved into it together? It's much more fun and interesting, and this whole, the escape is, I think, what we get to escape, at least for me, and this is I'm sure for you too, with this whole engagement of Yiddish culture, is we get to escape all the bullshit the things that didn't click for us. And maybe some of those things were okay. I don't know, our communities trying our best. Well, I think about the fact that Hebrew school, we mentioned this last time in the previous part, but Hebrew school, it didn't grab me. It was as alienating as it was, connecting. And it wasn't really until my engagement of Yiddish where I really would say I took any kind of ownership and self-direction, besides my bar mitzvah, which did have the promise of a large payout at the end, for my Jewishness in a way, So it's it gave me an outlet. It wasn't an escape in that way, but it got me from one place to another. That was a place that, I don't know, over the years certainly has made me feel a lot more confident in who I am and how I live in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel it was an outlet for myself, but it was also an inlet into a culture that I had not been raised in, per se, this like progressive Yiddish language culture and music culture. It was, yeah, we've talked about this, but I mean, I feel that at the same time, leaving America, living in Germany, and in like kind of, in some ways, yeah, I was in my mid-20s, and it was new horizons, and it was a new start, and uh, new connections, new languages, having Europe open to me, and still coming back and forth to the States, still visiting New Orleans in the years after Katrina, still coming to New York and making connections there. But this music was a way for me to grapple with the world. It was a way for me to
Yeah.
understand my place in history and the place of the present in history. I mean, this was the height of the Iraq War. This was, as you mentioned, the global economic collapse, which is not unrelated to the Iraq War, and the just the kind of orgy of criminal capitalism that characterized the Bush administration, and imperialism. And to have a transnational cultural framework for understanding the world, in exploring diaspora Jewishness, in exploring European Jewishness and migratory Jewishness, a Golis mentality, and a Golistic framework for Jewishness. I found that this was getting me into the world, and it was getting me into the world on a way, on terms that I could manage myself.
Yeah.
I remember I had a dream at some point in my first years living in Berlin. I had a dream that I was in a conversation with a woman stand-up comedian who was Puerto Rican. This is not a real person, but she was complaining to me about how when she does her set, everybody expects her to only talk about being Puerto Rican, and how like limiting that was. I don't know where this dream came from, but I remember one sentence from the dream, which was that I told her in the dream, I said, whatever the box is that you feel that they are shoving you into, you need to make clear to them that you own that box, that it's yours, that it's your box. You can get in and out of it as you please. You can lock it and you can unlock it as you please. You can define it the way you want to. And they can make clear that they want to see you in that box, and you just need to make clear that you own that box. I don't know where this dream, I mean, I relate to my own dream. And I woke up and I thought, okay, yeah, so I need to figure out how to own the box that I'm performing in.
Right.
And maybe that's just a shortcut. Maybe that doesn't really work out. Certainly, there are all kinds of problems associated with performative identity. And I don't think there's a way out of the problematics. I don't think there's a way to avoid them.
You can't teleport. This is what I always say, is like you can't suddenly, like, teleportation, even ideological or emotional teleportation, but it doesn't really exist. You're always traveling from point A to point B, and there's some space in between that you, like, let's say you want to get out of your box, you still have to climb out of that box, right?
Yeah.
You're not suddenly somewhere else. So there's always a process. There's always, I mean, one of the best, I had several teachers, mostly talking from a jazz perspective, who talked about evolution, right? And it's like, I mean, now my model for it is watching my child figure out how to pull themselves up from the ground to standing, and watching that the act, like the deepest act of practicing in service of a goal that I've ever witnessed, you know? And then, obviously that just continues. And if anything, I want for them, for all of our kids and for us, is to stay connected to that ability to doggedly pursue things. And I'll say that I've said this before, but like one of the biggest realizations from watching that was how little my child cared about success versus failure. Because, it's like, one of the problems with this is like we're trained so well to find something that works and then never do it and then just do that forever,
And that'll ruin us.
Yeah, even when it and the thing is like
that's what projection
right.
and trauma response is. Like,
yes,
it's like,
that's true. And the funny thing is that little kids don't even do that on the level of, I remember working on opening a jar lid and this coming into play, where it's like, once you figure out how to open a jar lid, there's not many different ways to open a jar lid. But that the practice of learning this still included getting it right and then getting it wrong again 100 times, trying to do something, just trying to explore the boundaries of this action. And I was like, holy shit, I got to get to work, because this is, I think, what the messiness is. And it reminds, so evolution is something I like fermenting. I don't ferment like, our friend Benji Fox Rosen, especially when he lived in Brooklyn, he was always fermenting everything. But I just think it's such a lovely metaphor of like, a combination of like a controlled and uncontrolled process.
Yeah, but that messiness, that comes back to why I guess I don't like to rehearse much, because I like keeping that messiness fresh in the performative environment. And if that practice, it's the stage is a place that I've felt comfortable on since I was a child.
Yeah.
And it's still one of the places where I feel it's a privilege to be able to be on a stage and to build this temporary relationship with all of these people. And if the last years have really taught me anything, it's that, coming back to this thing about the box, if it's a box of cultural identity and cliches, you can invite people into the box with you.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what performance is that we're just making this empty space, we're injecting it with certain meaning. And this is something I've said for years, is that we who are engaged in Yiddish culture work, what we're doing is not only bringing Yiddish content into various spaces, what we're doing is we are creating Yiddish contexts for ourselves and for our audiences and for each other. So it's context creation. And it's been so inspiring to see the ways in which, particularly younger folks, these days, they fully inhabit contexts. They have like holistic Yiddish cultural existence within their lives and in their communities.
Yeah.
And in their creative work. I mean, like I was listening to the interview that you did with the Magid Ensemble, and with like some of the folks who are making theater and music, and and bringing that to bear in the way that they engage with the world politically, from a position of supreme, assured. I guess it's pride. There's a pride there, and there's a kind of uncomplicated sort of. I don't know. I'm not in a position to say that it's uncomplicated. I'm sure it's complicated, but I'm really inspired by the dignity and the kind of koyach, the strength. That a lot of young people are bringing into this world, into this scene.
Listen, it's been. I remember it's been a joy, and obviously, like I'm telling you, I'm enjoying middle age. I'm in it now. There's no doubt about it, and it's pretty cool. I just got to make sure I can keep standing on my feet and run around the playground a little bit, right? And play and be able to like run around the playground to get a bit, go play a wedding, drive back from New York, and wake up the next morning and still be an effective parent. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's funny because especially with, one of the things that really like, so 10 years ago, we were playing this gig for the Folks Bean, I think it's Central Park. It might have been the first or second one of those that they ever did. And you call me up and you're like, hey, I got this wedding in Philly for this person.
Oh yeah.
And like, who knew that this would be a huge like pivot point in my life? So Rabbi Ariana Katz of Hinenu in Baltimore and their
Yeah.
partner Ever were getting married.
Praise be.
They were still living in, I know, still living in, and what was wild, I mean, this was like Dave Licht and I still talk about this gig every once in a while on like other gigs. And it was at a arboretum. There's many of these arboretums in Fairmount Park in Philadelphia. I was at one of them, and a little like old kind of carriage house or like an old like mansion kind of thing, and then a lot of beautiful outdoor space. I can remember it very vividly. And then there were all these people who I had never seen before in Philadelphia singing the lyrics to some of these songs that I think you could say are your hits, or you could say are some of the places where you really figured out how to own the box, right? These are the things that you were in your ownership decision to own the box really led you to, and figured out how to like, and it was just like, whoa, this traveled even farther than I thought.
That was wild. It was a really inspiring moment for me too. And to see the work that like Ariana has done, and other folks of her generation who's younger than us, engaging with the religion in a way that I felt I was denied, or I
didn't think
never
you could
could
even do it. I never thought you could take it that far.
But imbuing their religious practice and their like faith with a radical democratic energy and like a real like moral position that I'm still like, I draw so much strength from it, and I draw strength from it especially because I live and work in a very different Jewish political environment in Germany, which isn't to say there aren't lots of folks who are like righteously like engaging their Jewishness for what I think is the right side of things, or maybe the left side of things. And I just like, let's be honest, like this is a catastrophic time for Jewishness in many ways. I mean, it's horrible, and the ways in which folks have come together in their Jewishness to speak up and act up against what's going on it's inspiring, but we also shouldn't forget like that these folks are acting out of like horror and despair, because it's like, it's horrible what's happening. And in that like despaired cry, which people are also trying to bring into their work, we need to support each other. We need to lift each other up. We need to be open and thoughtful, and we also need to build as many bridges as we can.
Yep.
And seeing
I think it's amazing. Like it's incredible. Like, and the connections, what's amazing is how there's, when I was young in the klezmer scene, I think that people said, well, you're not going to ever really like have a lot of strong relationships with the sort of mainstream religious side. And that might be true, but to me, that was the only religious side that I knew about. And obviously it was like renewal stuff that in New York, maybe like that I hadn't really engaged with yet. Something like the whole world of Joey Weisenberg and that version of that thing also didn't exist at that time. He was just a klezmer mandolinist, playing some gigs and in Brooklyn and working at like developing at Kane Street. And like, but yeah, meeting Ariana felt like this sort of turning point, and then learning that basically me living in West Philly meant that I lived in like, you know, the queer anti-Zionist paradise, or something like that. It's a strange world that I live in that I record from my basement and it's definitely not representative of the entire world. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, at this time when we listen to the same podcast, we both read Jewish Currents magazine and listen to their podcast. We both listen to the Dig podcast. Shout out former West Phillian Daniel Denver.
Yeah,
and
another Daniel.
Another Dan. You know, we're going to do an episode of Radiant Others that's as many Dans as possible. So there's going to be like, it's all going to be Dans.
Okay.
You know, and Dan Karkner, the great source of all things Yiddish and klezmer, both the old school tracks and old school gossip. Follow him on old klezmers on Instagram. You're not going to regret getting those stories. And he was like, I love a Dan's episode. I was like, don't think you're getting out of this.
Oh, he's got to be there.
Yeah. But like, let's get back to the thing we're talking about, which is like, you know, like Palestinian people are being fucking annihilated. We live in like, we're living under a fascist, like a proto-fascist, like shit in America, which is only getting more ridiculous at the time of this recording from the last time we talked.
Yep.
And like very accelerationist with the, you know, assassination of that guy. And then you have the fact that like, you know, Israel is the state of Israel that we were brought up to believe was sort of like what'd you say? You said the source and the future of our people is like whatever the real story was, it ain't it now. And it's like completely fucked. And the people in it's just the worst thing you could possibly imagine. And the fact that we're living through these like, you know, nihilistic genocidal times that we have some place to go back to where we have some solid ground to stand on that's ours. From Yiddish culture, from not just from our history. It's not like we just received this. It's like you said, we did context creation. It's from our own work. And like it's from the songs that you brought from the past into the present. It's from the way we played them. You know, I remember someone from the Philly JVP chapter many years ago was like, hey, we really want to do this song Dumai at our Hanukkah party. Do you know anything about that song? And it's like, you know, oh no, I don't know much about that song. I only played the trombone part on it. No, I know. No, this is what this podcast is just a really long-winded version of that one joke.
Yeah, no, and I wrote
number 3.
No, and I got yelled at for it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I remember you were playing with us at Klez Canada when we played that song.
If only, that was a no.
Someone who I won't mention tried to. I think they tried to pull the power to the microphone or to the sound system, and then they were trying to get me, at least, if not others, thrown out of camp for singing a song. And I remember him yelling. It was just. It's a call for violence against my family. And I said, no, it's a song called Think. It's a call to thought. And my dad, David Kahn, he defended me, and he didn't even agree with me at that time, I think, about the politics. But the guy said something like, your son doesn't know shit about blah, blah, blah. And he said, hey, now I don't agree with him, but he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, he reads a lot. That was great for my dad to do. And I remember talking to folks there and having to spend days having like a lot of you know, very diplomatic conversations, and those that's certainly a mode that we find ourselves having to be in more and more these days.
I mean, Klez Canada just took place, and they put in so much work that I missed all of because I was parenting when I wasn't teaching or performing. But I heard from so many people about how connected everybody felt and how everybody was actually able to spend a week together focused on what brought them together rather than the other stuff. You know, what this
Yeah.
shared love of this culture and a choice to focus on the community. And, you know, like we say, like, you know, some of the people who have been inspired by your songs in particular. I mean, I remember talking to this guy, Ben Lorber, at a conference
Oh
many
yeah,
years
Ben's
ago. There's
great.
like
Ben's work is
I mean,
amazing.
listen, Ben is somebody who I look to for real information these days, you know, and he told me
Yeah.
flat out his political awakening came from listening to Dan Kahn and the Painted Bird. And like, shout out to him for taking that to such a place where, you know, he's or like I think about someone like Rabbi Mike Rothbaum, who's always posting beautiful things on Facebook, whose partner Anthony Russell is like such a dear member of and has contributed so much of his own voice and brought so many beautiful things to our Yiddish world. And yeah, I mean, it is wild
Absolutely.
to watch this work. Like, and it's not, I don't feel like I'm on the pedestal and I sent, or that you, I mean, because really talking about your songs that I played on, but like that we sent it out into the world and, oh, it's so wonderful what people have done with it. It's really reciprocal. Like we're the ones who have been transformed by watching what they've done with it.
But I also, what we were doing with that band and with other projects like me doing the Internationale with Psoy,
yeah.
or the Brothers Nazarov, you know, it was all very intergenerational. It was always
true.
about like engaging. I mean, the Brothers Nazarov, we had Michael Alpert, we had Bob Cohen, and we had Jake and me and Psoy. And you know, on these records here, yeah, I have Michael Alpert here and Pete Socolow and Adrian Cooper.
Yeah.
And then Sarah Gordon and you know, these projects like doing the Zemmer Ensemble with folks like Lauren Slamberg and Alan Byrne,
Yeah.
but also with
that was
Sasha.
another band that got to tour a lot. I was jealous about how much you got to perform.
Yes
Maybe.
and no. I mean, it's a big
Of course.
band, you know.
I mean,
and Sasha
touring is always
Luria and the work that she's doing, and
totally.
you know, folks like, you know, it's for me, it's always been a conversation, and we said this earlier. It's always just been about being part of this exchange and this sort of collective asking of questions. And when I write a song or when I translate a song into Yiddish, out of Yiddish, this is just my way of bringing something into the conversation or responding to something that was in the conversation already. These little islands of physical cohesion, these festivals where we see each other and then that cohesion sort of evaporates and then we see each other at the next one. It's become a model of connectedness and of community, which is way more sustainable than I ever thought it would be, and it's really inspiring. You know, I see it as a collective thing, and all those questions which I didn't feel comfortable asking out loud when I was a kid. At the Jewish Community Center.
I didn't even have the words. Yeah, I didn't have the words even.
You know, coming into this community and seeing that there were folks, you know, doing amazing, connected, rooted, radical work, like seeing the work of Jenny Romaine, you know, getting to work with her and with all the, you know, all these folks, all these people that we've been talking about, it, and just feeling that I was in a position to respond to it and to say, all right, well, this is what I bring to it. These are my little bag of tools. And here's a song that I think is a good response to this. And if I feel that I'm reaching for a song that isn't there, then I make a new song or I find a new one, you know? And in many ways, these last 3 records have been about filling in the gaps of Yiddish songs that I was reaching for and couldn't find. Nice. And so what did I do? I reached to the songwriters and poets that I love, that I loved before, folks like Tom Waits or Lou Reed or Bonnie Prince Billy or, you know, Ewan McCall. And at the same time, I reached to Nazarov and I reached to Yiddish poets, you know, like Moshe Leib Halpern or Bela Schechter Gottesman. And that then I have another tool in my box that I can.
And you have you found something that you felt like you were excited to add to the conversation, Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm even cannibalizing myself. I translated one of my own songs into Yiddish for this last record,
that's great.
and this is a song which has only unfortunately gained relevance. My song "God Brother," which was
Right. Oh, that was an
originally.
older song.
Yeah, I wrote it in English. It was on the Bad Old Songs, the quartet
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Painted Bird album from 2013 with Jake and Hampus and Michael. And it was a very personal song. And then right after the war started and after October 7th, I was working on a theater project and that was focused on Yiddish. And so I wanted to include that. And so I translated it and expanded it. And that's on this new record. It's also on the Lieder mit Palästina collection.
Du fährst dahin, geht's weit in Midbar. An neuem Shem nimmst du mit dem Land. Du gibst das Schuhe Eretz ziehen, mit der Waffen in dein Hand. Wir sind in Sinn von deures Golles, von selben Scheuß, von selben Ort. Was Unterheit gegangen wird Grenzen, ich und du, da und dort. Oh Gott, Bruder, wo ist dein Erd? Kann west Jehude mit der Spadel und der Schwert.
No, I think this is like going back to, the one thing I do want to say is not just that it's a conversation, but we also are allowed to sort of marvel at the impact of our contributions, even if we're not allowed to get a big head about it,
I try not to think about it too much.
No, I think it's really important to be able to work to strike that balance. And I'll always give the example of Peter Ralchev, the accordionist, and the other Europeans, who during sound checks was neither humble nor arrogant. He was the baby bear. He was exactly neither. He was just right all the time. And like teaching with him at Weimar, where he was like, what if we try this rhythmic thing? And then just like did this thing that I couldn't even figure out what he was talking about. And he's like, oh, okay, that didn't work. What can we do together? And it was just like he wasn't faking it. He wasn't hiding himself. He wasn't being a dick about it, how great he was. He's just like, yeah, I might be the greatest. What can we do now? And I was like, I think we're allowed. Like, I want to push everybody to be like, oh, you are really cool and you are really important and you should get in the conversation.
Yeah,
and also you get to
I'm all about that. You shouldn't. I mean, you bring up Ralchev. It's like you're talking about like. It's like you're talking about Superman or something. I mean,
Superman doesn't have to be humble, right? But he also shouldn't be so arrogant either. And you could find it. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But like, it's just this thing where I think we get to do it. Like I get to marvel about my place in like my West Philly community where, I bring a lot of Yiddish culture and I bring a lot of like that sort of I think a lot of the times it's just the confidence that I have in communicating this stuff gives people helps people grab it more fully, right? And, that's confidence that's come out of 20 plus years of, hard work and ridiculously lucky opportunities. And I think that that's true for all of us, and what's great is that I can do it for my own work. I can do it, when someone comes and says, oh, we really want to sing this Foolish Little Zionist song again. I was like, great. Like, I know all about that. I didn't record that one, but like, it's like part of our world. Right. And I think that sort of comes down to I think, you talk about the album as like, yeah, what are some of the things that you feel like you're saying that are sort of today's because you said before that like revisiting the old Painted Bird songs, you realized that while the craft has changed a lot, some of your goals haven't. And like, how do you like? What are some of the like songs you mentioned, God Brother, and some of the other songs that like? How do they really like? How do they
Yeah.
give you? What avenues are they for you?
Well, I still open most of my concerts with Beza Vinton.
Right.
I still think that song kind of says everything that I want to say. It's a kind of but something that Tony Kushner wrote in his play A Bright Room Called Day. He said, I wish for you a meteorology of human history that would give you, the strength to withstand the weather of politics. And
Yeah.
I think that song Zum Winter, that it's a kind of challenge to the evil winds. Say, come on, bring on your wrecking ball, as the boss said. Like, come on, do your worst. And there's chutzpah there, and there's like, it's empowering, it's ironic, it's dark as fuck, and it's the first Yiddish song that I seriously translated. It's the first song on the first Painted Bird record. It's the first song in many of my shows. I think that it opens up that space of weirdness and defiance and strangeness. And so that song, I use it in a lot of workshops. I get people to write parodies based on it, Juliet, acid reflux or whatever the thing that's bothering you, like, come on, do your worst. It's a great template. I mean, even Ben, you mentioned Benji, he showed me a Gebirtig parody of that song that was about black marketeers in the Krakow ghetto. I mean, template of summoning and challenging the forces of evil. I mean, it's War Pigs,
Yeah, right.
To mention the great Oz, Oliver Sholem. And so it's like those old songs, which are not only old because it was written 125 years ago, it's old because I've been doing it for 20 years. Yeah. They still work. They're still relevant. These still topics, it still hits. It's still because, talking about poverty and war and tyranny and hypocrisy and racism and, lifting each other up and despair and parasitism, like these are not specific to any time. They're pretty universal. And we get through them through the specificity of a particular cultural and linguistic framework. The new record, it's got a song about a sinking houseboat, like it's a song, it's just gone aground on the ground of being human. It's about running up against these the limitations of our bodies, of our experience, of our memory, the limitations of our interpersonal connections, and how being in community or communion or partnership with other human beings is the greatest challenge which this life presents us with. And we're lucky to have tools like music and storytelling to help us navigate those things. And, I'm lucky to be surrounded by such talented, amazingly sensitive people and to be in a community with them. I'm not a virtuoso. I dabble. I accompany myself on various tools, but to be able to play with folks like you, folks like Christian and Jake on this record, to be able to work with people like Sasha Luria and Alan Byrne, and to work with amazing, folks who do theater and dance and literature and
and to watch our work go out into the world and then inspire people who then inspire us. I mean, Wow. It is the greatest privilege in some ways. It really is one of the greats. And I think that, you know, I so glad I had a chance to perform these songs, these Yiddish songs on stage. You know, I people ask me if I'm fluent in Yiddish, and I always say, well, I know a lot of enough song lyrics to get through some conversations, you know.
Songs are the
And it's
best
like that
way
was
in. You know, I didn't
of
speak Yiddish
course.
before I started singing Yiddish. You know,
No,
like
for sure, for
you learn
sure.
a song, you learn how the stress goes, you learn how you listen to the singers who have sung
Yeah,
it
that's
before.
and you can do that even easier than we did when we were young, you
Yeah.
know. And
And then you
so
translate. I mean, translation for me was my
that's also
doorway
really
because
good.
as a
Yeah,
songwriter, I could take this and say, all right, well, how does this song work? How's it built? How would I
right.
build it in a different language? And now that I work, you know, with help from folks like Josh Waletsky and Isabel Fry, you know, like she's wonderful, and I sing one of her translations on the new record, and Michael Alpert, of course. You know, it's like the folks who, you know, I do these workshops with Josh and with Ada Hetko, and you know, like it's so inspiring to see people tinker with the language and learn to express themselves with it. And to take that license, to not be so precious, to take ownership of it. Because Theo Backel once said, he said, you know, take Yiddish, it's your Yerusha, you know, that's our birthright. Like
Yeah.
that's what birthright, you know, it's something that's inheritance, and it's a world inheritance, you
Yeah,
know, it's something
it's a generative inheritance, right? It
absolutely.
generates it grow it's fertile, it's fertilizing, and it grows. And for everybody listening to this, like I think I said this before, but like we didn't learn how to be we were taught how to be, and sort of we saw the model of how people were doing this. People like Adrian Cooper and like and Jenny Romain, the intergenerational model, and bring the past into the present, using the present to like explore the past and vice versa.
Hmm.
And we did our own thing. Please just do your own thing and then drag us into it. You know, drag us in the way that Dan talks about having dragged Adrian and Michael Alpert and Frank London onto his background singing on one track, which
Yeah.
is like a classic move. Also, that the Klezmatics did. It's like we don't, we're just doing it. Listen, I know what it's like to wait around, to wait for the right thing to come along, but I also am fortunate enough to know what it's like to just like dive in and do it, and balance whatever. Like, yeah, do it, and don't leave us behind. Like, drag us with you, because otherwise, it really helps us move too. And I think
Omain ve'omain.
it's, as we say, what a great place, Dan, comrade in
Brother,
Danhood,
Chaver, yes.
and so many more. What a pleasure.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
It's allemal COVID, and seien wir gesund und stark, in a Zisjahr. A Zisjahr für Reich allem.
Well, that was my conversation with my good buddy and an artist who I have immense respect and love for, Daniel Kahn. I hope you enjoyed this whole wide-ranging conversation and got a lot out of it. I know I did. It was so great to revisit everything, to refract our own experiences together, both from each other's personal experience of it and our experience of thinking about those times long ago, now in the present. It means a lot that we're still in this together. And I'm still in this together with all of you. Everyone who listens to this podcast, everyone who is making new Yiddish music, trying to learn old Yiddish music, bring it out into the present. It is something. You know, we are so grateful for all of our work. So once again, we really would love to have this podcast be an even bigger part of what draws and binds us together, what pushes us forward, drawing on the past, trampolining us into the future. Please support us at patreon.com/radiantothers or at tiptopjar.com/radiantothers. And everything that you give will go right back into making this podcast even better, bringing you more conversations, and hopefully drawing an even bigger picture, richer picture of our awesome Yiddish world. So in the meantime, I hope you're doing well. There's so much coming up in the Yiddish world. Yiddish New York is coming. If you're in Philadelphia, we've got Brivela and a glaze latte coming to West Philly at my favorite spot, Studio 34, on November 15th. Dan's album is coming out. Ira Temple just put out a great new record. Adrian Greenbaum just put out a really cool new record. There's just so much stuff. So stay tuned, stay in it, be with us, add your own voice. And in the meantime, I hope you had a great high holidays and a good Shabbos.
Yemen, Nagasaki, Port Said, Kirenaika, Lamsadraika, Chezvechaikas, Fort Aid, Finkapuli, Durchmetuli, Fliehashka, Mozambique, Rostarava, Salem, Java, Infant Dorta, Stick zurück, I die in